What is going on, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Huddle Within Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in to another episode. And I've been saying the last 3-4 weeks, the NBA hasn't had much news. The season has obviously been a bit of a shit show the last 2 months. A lot of teams are tanking, and, I guess some of the teams have made playoffs. The only real sort of race is like the Eastern Conference at the moment between 5 to 10. The first and second seed is pretty much locked up. There's a bit of an MVP debate between Wemby and Shea. I'm leaning more towards Shea. A lot of people are making arguments towards Wemby, and Wemby's also making his own case, which is quite interesting. I think Wemby should let probably the people that are watching and the media and everything make that case. But I definitely think Shea deserves it, just given that he's been elite on both ends of the floor. And, the fact that if he's not in that team, I think they struggle big time. I think Spurs have a pretty solid team when Wemby's not playing good enough to sort of make moves with Castle, Fox, and Dylan Harper. But today, I don't want to lash on too much about what's happening with the NBA season now, but actually what's going to be happening in the future. And they're looking at 2028, 2029. The Board of Governors have voted unanimously that they would welcome Seattle and Las Vegas to the NBA as the 31st and 32nd team. And someone that has been an NBA fan for a while now, I am so happy with this outcome. The opportunity for NBA to finally expand is well overdue. Now, hear me out. There are 4 teams, 5 teams, 6 teams tanking at the moment. And you can make an argument to say that if those teams are terrible, what makes Seattle and Vegas coming in improve the league? You have to remember, though, this is the best league in the world when it comes to basketball. There are so many players that are not in the league because of the talent pool. And you can't blame the shit teams for being shit because they're tanking for a number 1 pick. But what you have to also realize as well is that these organizations are purposefully building these teams to be this bad. They don't need to be this bad. The talent pool's there. There's a lot of players in other teams that can definitely be stars on this team. I reckon there's not enough franchise players. I reckon you have the opportunity to add 4 extra franchise players if you want to add 2 stars on each team. You've got 4 franchise stars. So it opens up the talent pool. It actually opens up the opportunity for more players to come in. And no one talks about like the 10th or 9th or 15th or 13th or 12th person on that bench that is just crying out for a better role. And adding 2 more franchises allows those players to potentially be better than what they are. We've seen so many stories where players have been terrible. Look at Ryan Rollins this year. He was on the Wizards, was struggling, and they were meant to be shit. He goes to a competing Milwaukee Bucks team, and he's balling the fuck out. This is what I'm saying. You have players like that. You have players that become role players, turn into stars. You look at Denny, you look at some most improved players, and then you think, imagine that they were on their own team, how much better they would be. There's a lot of scorers in the NBA. You look at Cam Thomas. Look, I know he's not a winnable player, but could you imagine he had the keys to Vegas or Seattle team where he has all the shots? He could easily put up 30 in the league. There's a lot of players that struggle to get into the league because they need to win. They need to adapt to the situation they're in, but they don't have the floor to be able to take as many shots. You open up 2 more teams, you open up extra shots for a person. The competition is very competitive right now. These bad teams are choosing to be not competitive. And it is true that they need to fix the tanking problem. The tanking problem does need to be fixed. I don't really have a solution. And today I don't really want to talk about that. I just want to talk about the benefits of expansion. So hypothetically, let's say teams are starting to compete and everything's good. We have enough of a talent pool. Vegas is a really, really interesting and compelling case for this expansion. And the main reason why that's the case is because this is a new market coming into the NBA. This is a team that's never been created before in the NBA. We haven't had previous history here. And, we've seen the success with the Raiders and the Aces as well, who are a really, really good basketball team. The market is there. The question is whether these fans would be able to convert from their Laker fandom, because I hear that there's a lot of loyalist Lakers fans in Vegas, to the potential Vegas. Would it be the Blackjacks? Could it be something to do with the casino? I'd love the name Vegas Blackjacks. I reckon that would be a sick name for these guys. But besides that point, you have a big market, a place where basketball is quite popular. Other sporting events are quite popular. You get WrestleMania there. I've talked about the NFL teams. Can the Vegas residents actually support a Vegas team, or does it just become like a corporate team? We will find out. But I like the concept. The market's good there, and I think Vegas needs an NBA team. There's a lot of success in Summer League. I think attendance will be great. I think this team, though, has to be successful in terms of winning, because I feel as though if the team's not winning, their attendance is not going to be really high. But other than that, I'm really excited to see that. An opportunity for fresh new colors, a fresh new name, a fresh new brand, something that we haven't seen in so long. The last time we've had like a new expansion team was the Charlotte Bobcats back in 2002. Now, you've had the Pelicans change their brand, their name, but that was taken from the fact that they obviously relocated and were the Hornets, became the Pelicans. But otherwise, this is a fresh new team with fresh new colors and a fresh new opportunity. It's exciting. And then you've got the complete opposite end, which is a team with a lot of history, a team that has been in the league before, known as the Seattle Supersonics. Will they remain the Supersonics? I am certain it will, but you never know with NBA. They might want them to change. A team that's won a championship before, a team that's had Kevin Durant, has had, if I'm looking back, Gary Payton. And, you know, in the 90s, they were really successful. The reason why this team obviously is not the team anymore is because the Oklahoma City Thunder owner, who the Starbucks guy sold the franchise to, wanted to always move there. And the fact that they couldn't get a stadium, a new restructured stadium in Seattle, was the reason why they left OKC. And they're looking pretty successful now. But there was a chance for them to potentially become Seattle again, and the Kings were going to relocate. Steve Ballmer, who now is the Clippers owner, was actually close to buying out a bit of share in the Kings franchise and moving that to to Seattle. And the funny part is that obviously that was never going to happen because California capital is Sacramento. So Sacramento, I don't think is going anywhere, especially considering that it is the capital of California. It's not the biggest market, but it is a capital. So one of the biggest states in America. So I don't think that goes. But the fact that they were close there just shows how bad they want a basketball franchise in Seattle. And Seattle is one of the biggest markets in America as well. So the fact that they don't have a team is a surprise in itself. I told you why that was the case. But as of 3 years, they brought in an NHL team called the Seattle Kraken. That's been going off. The stadium's looking good. And it looks as though they're going to share facilities. So getting Seattle in will be massive in terms of historicness, in terms of like throwbacks. The colors of the Sounders is Supersonic. Sorry, thinking about the MLS team, who's also a really good success, one of the biggest MLS clubs in America too. But yeah, the bloody far out again, the Sounders and the Supersonics. Yes, I'm back on track. The Supersonics is just an iconic name with iconic colors and, you know, iconic players and iconic history. So having Seattle back is huge. And, you know, I think that's going to be a story in itself to have everything back and all the fans going to go crazy. I'm certain that all the Seattle loyalists will turn back to supporting the Supersonics as well. And I really hope they don't change their name. Could Kevin Durant retire there is a really good question. I think that would be really, really awesome as well. But, you know, expansion for NBA, I'm all for it. You know, I love the idea of it. 32 teams. I think Minnesota goes to the East. I'm sure Minnesota fans will be really happy about that because they're in a very tough, competitive Western Conference. And I think geographically it makes sense. I know that Memphis is obviously closer to the East if you look at the actual map itself. But if you look at where the teams are situated, Minnesota is really close to the teams of Chicago, Detroit, Indiana, Cleveland, etc. So that can easily be a division there. And it just makes a lot of sense there. Some other teams that I would have thought potentially could have got a franchise was definitely Kansas City. In terms of sort of like that East area, Kansas City is quite isolated. There isn't many like basketball franchises there. You've got the Chiefs who are really successful at the moment. So I would have thought Kansas City could have been a really good option. Another one would have been St. Louis. St. Louis had the Rams. They lost the Rams. They used to have the Hawks. They don't have the Hawks anymore either. So maybe St. Louis, if they wanted to go bold, obviously Mexico City, but I don't think logistically that would have worked. And obviously Vancouver, who had a team before, but wasn't able to sort of get in the success that they hoped for. That's why they obviously moved to the Grizzlies as well. So like in terms of expansion, that's sort of where I'm sitting with that. I think that those two have got to come in, and I reckon it's going to be a big success. I 100% am confident that it's going to be a big success. We had a unanimous vote from the governing bodies, and, you know, we'll see what happens. Now, the teams are valued at like 7 to 10 billion. That is a lot of money. And if you look back, the Lakers were bought at a discount then, because the guy that bought the Lakers bought them for about 10 or 11 bill. He's probably laughing at the moment because you've got two new franchises that are up to 7 to 10 billion. And, you know, I know a lot of people are obviously going to be fighting for that. going to want that franchise, they will get buyers. A lot of people concerned that they won't get buyers. I think they will get some buyers, especially in Vegas. I think someone is going to snap up Vegas. And, why wouldn't you want to get a team in Seattle? Seattle is massive too. So I think a good choice to nominate those two cities. And I think talent pool's there. I think they just got to fix up the tanking. And, if we're bringing in 2 more teams, that means we're getting an extra 164 games. That's where I would say just cut the season short. 82 games, too much. Go down to 60. You're getting, like I said, 164 new games added because you're adding 2 new teams. So why wouldn't you look at cutting the season down? Like, we're in March, as I said, we're in trouble when it comes to the NBA, when this tanking stuff is happening and when there's too many games. Like, people don't want to play. They're going to rest. They're going to just prioritize what game's more important. And obviously playoffs is another. If you play the maximum amount of games in the playoffs, you could play 28 games. Like, that's crazy. You got 4 rounds. The least you're playing is 16. The most you're playing is 28. You add that with your regular season of 82. You're hitting a minimum of 96 games if you're a playoff team going all the way. That's like, come on, guys. It's too many games. Yes, I know you make money, you get your profits and all that, but the reality is it's too many games. The quality is low. No one is tuning in. We've got March Madness, who's proper overtaking. How good was that game winner by UConn over Duke? Oh, the Boozer twin. Man, that's a sad way to go out, but we've got that. Even NBL playoffs are kicking on if you care. If you're an Aussie, you're keen on tonight because you've got the 36ers taking on the Kings, and we've got a bit of a heated battle with Bryce Cotton and Terrence Davis, or whoever his name is, but he's elite, and they're both elite. So I've got Adelaide winning tonight, and then there should be a game 5 to decide. But I'm really hope Adelaide win, or else maybe Sydney wraps it up today. Their team is stacked. But otherwise, you've got all that happening. Australian fans, you've got footy as well. Footy's back. And then you've got the end of football, if you're following football too. So NBA to me is declining, going down. And if you're a WWE fan like myself, there's WrestleMania. So NBA is just going down, down, down for me right now because of the fact that there's too many freaking games. And, a lot of people that probably religiously support basketball who have it at the top level, still probably think it's too many games. So for someone that obviously is watching footy, is watching soccer, is watching wrestling, is watching NFL, NFL is obviously not on now, but you get my gist. How can you fit basketball at the moment in your life especially when like obviously the Wizards being shit don't help. AJ Devance is coming home, I hope. We'll do obviously a pod on that when that happens. But yeah, it's just like expansion. It makes things exciting. It's something to talk about, some good news. And I think everyone would be keen to really just see new NBA fresh blood. So that's pretty much my spill on obviously expansion. And obviously I can't go without sort of bringing up the Jaden Ivey situation. Look, I'm all about people expressing their beliefs. And I think that there are some worse things that have happened in the league when it comes to people getting abused, and whatnot. I think, look, bringing up the homophobic stuff and the LGBTQ stuff is probably not right publicly. Obviously, God has different beliefs to that, but at the same time, he says to obviously love and respect all kinds of people and their decisions. So I think Jaden Ivey's failed at that education if you are going to obviously read the Bible and go into it more. And also casting prejudice on people is not what I agree. And also as a Catholic, don't really like the comment he made on sort of the fact that Catholicism isn't the true doctrine religion, where the Bible clearly does state. As a Catholic believer, obviously we don't know what's going to happen. We don't really know the answers. We believe what we believe and we respect what people believe fundamentally. But the Catholic Church, if you go back to it, if you want to listen, if you care, Jesus does say to Peter to build his own church, and he is the first pope and the first sort of person that built the church. His tomb is under the Vatican. So for all that's worth, I think a bit of research from Jaden Ivey to sort of look at that religion would have been nice, but also to not really cast prejudice as well. And also to mention the fact that he mentioned that God will not hear your prayers if you're a sinner. I think everyone in this world sins. That's why we're human. And that's why we reach out to confession and we obviously resurrect our sins, or not resurrect, we reconcile our sins to Jesus to be a clean slate. So I don't necessarily agree with everything he says. I respect the fact that he's standing up for what he believes. But at the same time, I think the way he's going about it is quite intense. There is obviously some mental stuff there in terms of just like the fact that his trajectory in the league has been pretty unlucky, broke his leg, the top 5 pick, all expectations. But you know what? For him, he's probably taking out the 10 million and he's sticking up for his faith, salvaging his life. And, you've got to respect it, whether you think it's mental health or not. We don't know. We'll find out one day. I just don't think the way he went about it was probably the best way possible. You look at someone like AJ Griffin, who didn't really throw his sort of emotion like that, but he left the league and he said he wanted to leave the league because he wanted to serve Jesus Christ as a pastor. And that was very well respected. A lot of people would have said he could have done both, but he decided that and he went out, I think, gracefully. So there's ways to do it. And I don't think Jaden Ivey's done it in the best way, but I do respect, again, that he's sticking up for his beliefs and whatnot. There's a lot of things that have happened worse in the NBA, so him getting waived is quite strict, and I feel like if that was a star player, they wouldn't get that same treatment, but the league's done what they've done, and, whatever Jaden Ivey is doing in the future, I wish the best of luck to him. But that's sort of my spill on the Jaden Ivey situation. I didn't mean to make it political or everything, but just thought I'd put my 2 cents in on that. Just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for tuning into another episode of the Huddle Within podcast. If you do enjoy episodes like this, or this episode specifically, be sure to leave a comment and a 5-star review wherever you do get your podcasts. It'd be also great if you could like and subscribe wherever you do get your podcasts, so we can continue to show this out to people that see sports exactly the way that you do. But without further ado, let's get straight back into it. And then we'll go on to some AFL. So we've obviously had round 3 occur. We had 2 really, 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 really boring Thursday and Friday night footy games. We had Geelong obviously beating Adelaide by 8 points, but it was 60-68. And you might think, oh, close game, it would have been good. Terrible. I personally do not like the way Adelaide play footy. I think it's extremely boring. I think it's slow. And, it's not fun. I've seen them play for the last 3 weeks, and I'm not really a fan of how they play. They've been unlucky with their 2 losses. I think they're going to be just fine. But if they lose to Freo, they might be in big trouble. And Freo are out the gate really hot at the moment. They couldn't kick for shit last weekend. But anyways, they got their win. And, Geelong are fit and firing in a game where I'm keen to go watch. Geelong taking on Hawthorn at the G on the Easter Monday clash. I will be there, so I'll be excited. And another game that I was at was the Pies beating GWS by about 33 points. It was terrible game. Don't really like watching footy at Marvel, but I think for this game, it was probably the right approach given that the crowd wasn't that high and GWS obviously traveling. They didn't play well. Jesse Hogan wasn't good, but they managed to get a lot of the ball, but didn't really do too much of it. Like you had Woodfield at like 39, Callahan with a mid-30s, and Clayton Oliver like 38. They still didn't really do enough. The Pies, not convinced. I'm trying to not be too pessimistic, but from what I saw, I'm not confident going into this week's game against Brisbane. I think we're going to get spanked, but, a win's a win, and we take that. Brisbane did get their victory against St Kilda. It was really, really close at 3/4 time, and then Brisbane just kicked away, proving too good, and St Kilda, of that war chest, looking a bit troublesome at the moment, I think. And then you had Richmond take on Freo. As mentioned, Freo absolutely beat the shit out of them. They won by 60 points, but they copped 25 behinds, man. 25 behinds has to be some record. Like, imagine if they kicked 15 behinds, let's say a bit more respectable amount. It's still a lot, but kicking 15 behinds is a bit of standard. They would have smacked them by over 100 points. So the scoreline doesn't really reflect the domination. It just reflects the fact that Freo weren't kicking straight. And they're going to have to kick straight against Adelaide because that's going to be a tough game for him. I do expect that it will be good. I think they'll compete, but, I back Adelaide. I'll say my tipping until I sort of round up the next games. And then we had the most boringest game, Essendon and North Melbourne. Obviously, Tristan Sherry suspended for 3 weeks. Shout out to him, Caroline Springs guy from the local area. He got 3 weeks for something he'll probably regret, but, you move past it. There, and he did say sorry, he was apologetic, so that's what it is. And then you had, for me, probably the game of the round, which is crazy. You had Port taking on West Coast. It was a 2-point thriller. And how good are them Eagles, man? Them Eagles have won 2 in a row, and they are bloody flying high. They've doubled their wins from last season. Usman and Harley Reid are looking like an unbelievable duo. They live together. They just, they're having so much fun out there. Shanahan, what a clutch mark at the end to sort of save them the victory. And, Zach Butters has got to go now for sure. That wasn't really good enough, was it? Like, come on, guys. The Port I expect a bit more from. They obviously smacked Essendon up, who, oh, aren't they shit? I forgot to even bring that up. Like, North Melbourne getting the victory, good. That gives them confidence going into Carlton. But, mate, Essendon, I don't think you're going to win a game. They are rubbish, man. They can't defend. Oh, it's embarrassing how bad they are. But, we're all going to die one day, according to Brad Scott. So it doesn't really matter, does it? Like, if you want to have a good look on life, that's probably the best way to approach it. I love the out of context memes. I find it quite funny. I think if a lot of people have taken it out of proportion, and he's done his best Joe Mazzulla quote, but it really does make sense. But I think Essendon are in a real dire state right now. They haven't won a final in over 25 years. They've created the Essendon rule, and by that, the play-in. They've tried to help Essendon out as much as they can, but they're simply not helping themselves. And I think they're on a proper rebuild, and they're going to be very bad for a long time. And, I feel sorry for those Bombers fans. There's a lot of yous and a lot I know. So, yeah, good luck with that. But going back to West Coast, they're looking good. They've accelerated their rebuild, sort of, defeating North, defeating Port. And, they've got an opportunity to verse Sydney next week in a home game where, people are looking and thinking they won't be surprised if they win. And that's crazy for West Coast because West Coast at the start of the season looked to be the shittest team coming in. And, I think they're right now better than North Melbourne, who North Melbourne are doing well. They're better than Port. They're better than Essendon. And you can make a case that they're better than Richmond and Carlton. So can they make a play-in? You don't know. I think of all those terrible teams that I mentioned, I'm going to put North in there, but North, to me, are probably the best of the bunch. Richmond, Carlton, which is so great to see. Oh, I can't wait to talk about Carlton. Port Adelaide, West Coast, Essendon, those six. I think out of all of those six, North Melbourne and West Coast are probably the best two at the moment. And then you'd probably go Carlton. You won't want to, but you would. Port, Richmond, and then Essendon. Like, crazy. It's hard to sort of mix and match them. We'll find out towards the season. That's where I'm thinking they are based on results right now. North Melbourne next week is going to tell us a lot about who they are, and Carlton's obviously needs to bounce back. They have to win that game. So, I don't know. We'll see. But, shout out to West Coast and shout out to the Melbourne Demons, who were down as much as 42 points at quarter time and were down like 23 points with 11 minutes to go. Go out and smack up Carlton by 23. Like crazy. Carlton choked. What a laugh. How funny is that? It's so good to see Carlton shit. I can't say anything good about them. I can't stand them. I'm obviously a Pies fan, but I just can't stand Carlton. So every time they lose just makes me happy. And I'm glad that they've lost once again. They are in dire state though. In dire state. Because losing that was rough. And Melbourne aren't an amazing team, but they made them look amazing. Cosy Pickett's elite. He just proved it. Max Gawn is elite. Just proved it. And, Melbourne are fun and exciting at the moment. I don't expect them to do much, but at the moment, the way they're playing, they're looking really, really good. And, you can only look at what they've done and give them respect because the fact of the matter is they have a chance to make a play-in and they've also lost two of their probably most influential midfielders. Obviously, they've sort of regressed while they're at Melbourne. They still won on the flag and they were still both elite. And now they're doing this. It's incredible. It really is incredible. But we'll move on to round 4 where we have the Pies taking on the Lions at the Gabba. And look, man, as much as I'm rooting for the Pies, as much as I hope they win, I think we're going to get smacked this one. I think Brisbane are going to humble us big time. It's been a while since we've obviously lost at the Gabba, but I think we're going to lose this one humbly. I think we're in big trouble. So give me the Lions, unfortunately. I think it's going to be a reality check for the Pies. We haven't looked good, in my opinion, this week. We're obviously not probably going to have Pendles available. Darcy Moore's out with a hammy. I just don't see how we're going to stop their midfield and their forward line. The only way I think I could believe in us is if Oscar Steen, who had a really good debut, I forgot to mention, really, really good debut, encouraging signs there to allow Darcy to be around the ground and potentially more time in the forward line. If he can tap it straight to Dacos, we might have a chance. But I don't think it's going to happen as much as last week. And I just don't think will even be enough if it does. So, give me Lions. North Melbourne, Carlton, Good Friday game. I think North Melbourne will win. I will hope that North Melbourne will win because I can't stand Carlton. And it'll just prove the point how shit they are. And I think this will be one of North Melbourne's biggest games of the season. They obviously have this Good Friday game tradition. Same time as Good Friday, a bit sus. Otherwise, it's a good opportunity for them to just turn up at a big game. They obviously got smashed last time, so they want to make up for it. And then we got, for me, I reckon, second game of the round, Adelaide and Freo. I think the Crows will get it done. They need to win. They have to win this game. So I'm getting the Crows and backing them here. Richmond and Port Adelaide. This one's hard to tell. I have tipped Port Adelaide for this one. I think Richmond will struggle, and I need a hot take here. So I think Port Adelaide bounce back. I don't think Port Adelaide are as bad as what they've shown. They obviously show they can smack a team if they're not on their day, but they've obviously shown they can't perform too. There's a lot of injuries there. There is a lot of injuries there, but I think Port Adelaide will get it done. West Coast and Sydney. Sydney will be too strong. I'm sorry. As much as I would love West Coast to win, I think it would be great and it'd be awesome for their their momentum right now to win 3 in a row. I just don't think they're good enough to beat Sydney. I think Sydney gets that done, but I expect them to actually be competitive, West Coast. I don't think they'll get smashed by a lot, but I think at the end they'll sort of fade out and Sydney will be proven too good. Then we've got Melbourne and Gold Coast. Give me the Gold Coast Suns. I think the Gold Coast Suns will make quick work there. They're looking elite. And then Bulldogs have the bye week this week, so I expect the Bulldogs to win. I'm only joking. They're taking on Essendon at Marvel. So, yeah, it is basically a bloody bye week. I think they are going to get obliterated. Like, honestly, this is going to be fucked. And then you got Hawks and Geelong. And I'm going to take the Geelong Cats to win. I think Geelong will just be proven too experienced and, they'll get them on the big day as they tend to do. Geelong are a very organized and well-oriented side. They beat Adelaide by 8 and it wasn't convincing, but I just think that they'll get it done. And that pretty much rounds up round 4. I'll obviously be at the Geelong Hawks game, which I'm really excited for. Just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for tuning into another episode of the Huddle Within podcast. If you do enjoy episodes like this, or this episode specifically, be sure to leave a comment and a 5-star review wherever you do get your podcasts. It'd be also great if you could like and subscribe wherever you do get your podcasts, so we can continue to show this out to people that see sports exactly the way that you do. But without further ado, let's get straight back into it. And then finally, there's a big international break for the Prem, so we're not going to see a lot of Premier League football for a while now. But what we did see was Italy bounce out of the World Cup 3 times in a row. I can't help but laugh. I reckon it's the funniest thing. And you know what? I don't feel sorry for them. You know why? Because 1, they robbed us in 2006. That should never have been a penalty. I was 8 years old. I had obviously full knowledge and context about how soccer worked. And in that time, I knew we got robbed. So that's 1. 2, fans are very arrogant. I can't stand the Italian fans, especially when they're in Melbourne. If you know, you know. And 3, it's just funny. Obviously I collect Zero ballers. They've created some Italian ones. They won't be useful for this because, they obviously and on the World Cup. But they lose to Bosnia 1-1. They had a red card, which was very unfortunate. There was a goalkeeper error from Moise Kean to score in the first 17 minutes. And then they equalized in about the 77th. And then penalties was penalties. You had one that went skied over and another one that was obviously hitting the crossbar. And Bosnia were just too clinical with their penalties. One was an 18-year-old who had big balls to be able to take a penalty, so respect to him. And, Bosnia go through. They're going to be really happy. Obviously, it's a bit of an upset. And, in all seriousness, it is actually quite concerning that Italy are not going to 3 World Cups. The last time they was in a World Cup, I was 14 years old, which is quite a crazy stat. 3 World Cups in a row, not good at all. It's quite embarrassing and shocking, if I'm honest. And look, maybe they'll recover next time, but like that would hurt. That would hurt big time. This is on a team that, in all seriousness, shouldn't miss out on a World Cup, especially when you have the likes of Cape Verde in there, Curacao in there, Iraq who qualified, which we'll talk about. Graham Arnold's obviously the coach there. And a lot more. And that's not disrespect to those nations. It's obviously Europe is the strongest and they've opened up more sort of teams in other confederations to qualify. And it does mean more to them. So I'm not fully against it. I just think obviously Italy are much better teams than all those. But, Europe is Europe. It's a tough confederation and things like this happen. We also had Czech Republic winning on penalties as well to defeat Denmark, who are out of the World Cup. They were a former top 10 team as well. So that was actually really upsetting for them. We won't be able to beat them 1-0 to go to the round of 16 as Aussies, so that's quite unfortunate. But Czech Republic get through. Turkey beat Kosovo. I was obviously hoping for Kosovo to win, given that they're obviously Albania's little brothers, and obviously most of the people there are Albanian too. They lose 1-0. Turkey were the better team, and we welcomed them into our first game of the World Cup as Aussies because we'll be taking them on, and they're going to be in our group along with Paraguay and USA. So that will be obviously really interesting. Turkey, from a team that got into playoff, are probably one of the favorites to get out of that group. They're probably one of the strongest teams. So, look out for that. I think it's a very balanced group between us, Paraguay, USA. I think we lose out in terms of obviously home field advantage. Paraguay being in South America will have a low traveling fans, US being the host nation, and then obviously Turkey being probably a better side than us, given that they are in Europe. And they have a wonder kid of the name of Arda, who, is really good. But again, that is our group. Turkey goes through. Sweden also go through. They beat Poland 3-2. So it makes me feel a lot more better as an Albanian, obviously losing to Poland 2-1. Despite being 1-0 up, despite multiple opportunities to close the game out, we could have had a home game against Sweden, but I think Sweden probably were the better team and well deserved to go through. It was a late Gyökeres goal to seal it, and he's had an incredible, like last week, he's had 4 goals in 2 games, and most importantly, the winner to take him to a World Cup. So that is awesome in itself. And that pretty much wraps up all the World Cup sort of teams in terms of Europe. And then obviously on the other side, you had Iraq taking on Bolivia, Iraq winning 2-1. What a story there. Graham Arnold goes to a World Cup with that Iraqi team, and you didn't expect them to win, but they did get the victory there. And then Congo obviously made it through as well. So we might see that Salute guy stand for 90 minutes in the US if they fly him out. That would be probably pretty cool to see. And, shout out to Congo for making the World Cup too. And that pretty much is your World Cup group, which is quite awesome. Just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for tuning into another episode of the Huddle Within podcast. If you do enjoy episodes like this, or this episode specifically, be sure to leave a comment and a 5-star review wherever you do get your podcasts. It'd be also great if you could like and subscribe wherever you do get your podcasts, so we can continue to show this out to people that see sports exactly the way that you do. But without further ado, let's get straight back into it. The WrestleMania card is finally sort of shaking up. We had Sami Zayn become and crowned the new United States champion. Who will be taking on Trick Williams? Will Carmelo Hayes be entered into that triple threat? I'm not too sure, but I think he'll have a lot to say after the fact that Trick Williams costed him the title by hitting him, and Sami Zayn took the opportunity, which Carmelo Hayes wouldn't be happy about either. So maybe he gets injected to the match. That's going to be awesome. That's for the US title. We have a 5-man ladder match, not a 6-man, for the Intercontinental title. Apparently, and I watched main event, apparently it's the main event winners that obviously got through. Not really true, but, we take it as it is. JD McDonough, Rusev, Javon Evans, who I think is a very high favorite to potentially win it, Penta, and Dragon Lee. So that is a pretty nice 5 for, I think, a ladder match that will be pretty cool. And I'm glad that they're bringing in a ladder match for this. We have an unsanctioned match between Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre. I still think Drew McIntyre got screwed over with the opportunity to defend his WWE Championship or even have a rematch, which I know is not fair. You also have randomly, and this is because they didn't have any opponents for these two, Gunther and Seth Rollins. Gunther attacking Seth Rollins without really explaining himself, just putting 2 pieces of a puzzle together that doesn't fit, but just trying to get, them 2 on the card. Like, you have to get Gunther, you have to get Seth Rollins on the card. So it makes sense for them to do that. We have a fatal 4-way women's tag team title match with the irresistible forces of Nia Jax and Lash Legend, those 2 taking on Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, the Bella Twins, and Lyra Valkyria and Bayley. So that is another match. What else was confirmed? I think those 3 were pretty much the ones that confirmed. We got new World Tag Team title champions, the vision of Logan Paul and Austin Theory. Obviously, Speed screwed them over, so there might be a WrestleMania opportunity match for Speed. There might also be another one for Jelly Roll as well. I think there's a lot of matches more to be created as well. You got Io Sky and Asuka having a bit of beef. I feel like they're going to have a blood feud at WrestleMania too. So, the card is shaking up. If those matches added, you also have AJ Lee and Becky Lynch for the Intercontinental title. You've got Stephanie Verkerb and Liv Morgan. You've got Jade take on Rhea Ripley. You've got CM Punk and Roman Reigns. You've got Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. And I also forgot to mention that obviously Dom Mysterio and Finn Balor are also going to be taking each other on. So the cards are taking shape. I'm not too happy with the way Triple H has rushed most of these things. I would have preferred a bit more of a long build for a lot of these storylines, but you take what you can get. And especially for the Seth Rollins and Gunther situation, it was really hard for them to sort of create something because I think that they were forced out of their hand with all the injuries there. So that pretty much wraps up the latest WWE news. We're about 2 weeks away from WrestleMania, which is exciting. So that means we have 2 more weeks to build up these WrestleMania feuds and these matches that have just been announced. So I'm really, really keen for that. And, that pretty much wraps up all the sporting news for this week. So, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Honestly, a really good episode. I enjoyed obviously talking about expansion, and there was a lot of news coming out of basketball. WrestleMania is getting close. Footy is ramping up. There's a bit of an international break, but that allowed us to obviously talk about World Cup qualifiers, which is awesome. And, again, we'll be back next week for more sporting news. So, stay tuned for that. They'll be back again next week. And, I'll catch you guys again when we get back. If you did enjoy the video, if it's your first time here, as I always say, love if you could leave some comments. A bit of a review would be awesome. And if you can subscribe wherever you do get your podcasts, more people will be able to obviously see it and just enjoy, obviously, the sporting content that is a bit of a generic sense, but allows you to sort of get all your information all in one. So, again, thanks very much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys next week. Cheers. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Huddle Within Podcast. I appreciate you for tuning in and being part of this community where we go beyond the game and into what really matters. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who sees sports just the way that we do. And hey, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on my social medias, which will be linked below. Send in your thoughts and even be part of a future episode. Until next time, keep that passion alive, stay in the huddle, and remember, it's always deeper than the game. Cheers.